It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, May 17th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is having fun with our Flyers to do list. So we're going to keep it going with more long term goals today.
Long-term goals. That sounds serious.
Yeah, well, trust the process. All right, let's start the show.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there. Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who is on Twitter at Sportsology. You can subscribe or follow us for free on YouTube. We're now on the SiriusXM app. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, you'll get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, looking at what the Flyers have been doing as far as their long-term goals, or what we think they should be. We have a lot to get into, and I joked about trusting the process here in terms of the
Nobody trusts it for
Sixers.
the Sixers
I
anymore.
know.
It's
I
over.
know. And so I like worry about whether or not they're going to go in that direction, right? Just like trust us. And Philadelphia sports fans have been burned on that. So that's just something I keep in the back of my head. So I hope they use a different approach in
They have
terms of
to.
how they message it,
They
right?
have to. They can't use those words. They can't even try and copy that way that they did it. If any of it sort of gives people like the feeling that it's the Sixers, it's not going to go over well. So they have to stay away from
Yeah.
that part of it.
Yeah, they do. In the meantime, real quick before we dig into that a little bit more, today is one of the first couple of days without hockey
I
in a long
know.
time because there are fewer teams left in the playoffs. We've got off days now, and so the conference championships aren't starting until tomorrow. But we talked a little bit about Florida versus Carolina on yesterday's show. My gut says Carolina, but I don't know because Florida has been surprising us all playoffs.
Yeah, I like Florida because I feel like they're coming in hot. I mean, they both are, but I feel like they have a little bit more. I feel like their confidence is soaring. I know that Carolina's best defense is going to be their defense and their forecheck and all that, but I think that Florida right now, with getting what Bob's getting, even though Bob's losing a lot of weight during games, did you see that? I mean, it's one of those things where
Yeah,
he's
he's
working
working
hard.
hard.
He's working hard, but so is Zach Blad because he's kind of making up the difference with Bob on what's wrong with their defense. Carolina's going to try and make up the difference on offense. I know they had a little bit of an outburst that last game against the Devils, but I think the Devils just broke down at that point. So I feel like this one feels like it's going to go 7, but I do like Florida. I feel like they have a lot of different guys that could score. I'm seeing the best play I've seen out of Anthony Duclair in a long time, and that speed is hard to handle. And I still don't love Carolina's goaltending. It's about the matchup though, because I had some fans already hating on me after I got off Sirius, some Carolina fans, and I'm like, listen, I preseason, pre-playoffs, I was on a morning show there, and I picked them as a 50% chance to make it to the conference final. Well, they've made it. And if they would have made it against somebody else, I'd be picking them. But right now, Florida just seems like the team for me that is overcoming all obstacles.
Yeah, and I think for Dallas versus Vegas, I gotta go with Vegas here. I just feel like Dallas has been like getting through these series and aren't playing to the best of their ability.
Well, they're not. I mean, Jason Robertson doesn't have a goal. So they're
Hmm.
clearly not. But if he were to get hot with everything else that's going on, I do like Dallas. I think their goaltending is just a little bit better. If, you know, Logan Thompson were goaltending for Vegas, I'd have a different feeling. Petrangelo is tremendous. Jack Eichel outplayed Connor McDavid to some degree last series, which is a big deal. But I still go back to to Dallas, and they were ice cold in their veins. For Game 7, Seguin looks like he's rolled it back a bit. He had a great game. Rupe Hintz, and then Pavelski. You never know if he's going to put in 4 goals again.
I know.
I think Dallas could do it. I think Ottinger could be the difference.
Yeah, that is definitely possible. It's certainly kind of been up and down for Vegas this season
It
as
has.
well, but their core is just really performing
Oh,
right
it's
now.
rock solid.
So,
It is.
yeah, and then, just one little bit of women's hockey news that might be relevant to some people out there. We've talked about the Metropolitan Riveters on this show many times. It's the closest, women's pro team to the Philadelphia area. They play in New Jersey, and they're getting a couple of really interesting signings this offseason. Nora Ratu, who is a Finnish legendary goaltender, and her Finnish teammate, Susanna Tapani, who is a phenomenal hockey player, many, many medals in world championships and the Olympics for Team Finland. And if both of them really are going to the Riveters, that could be a real game changer for that team. And I highly suggest that you follow them into the next season out there because PHF hockey is getting real good going into next season.
It is. Tapani, I just know the name. I don't really remember her play. I did mention Nora Ratu on another show because uh, her play is always phenomenal. I quoted her
Yeah.
stats this year. I mean, if she had better support on her team, she wouldn't be piled up with bronze medals for like world championships and Olympics. She would have gold. So even Kevin Allen felt like she's a Hall of Famer, and
Oh,
I do
100%.
too. And I think she's one of the best of her generation. So I definitely tell people go out and see her because she is something special.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and Tapani has just been a mainstay on Team Finland for many, many years. She took last cycle off from Team Finland, but she's getting back in the game, and we are all going to be better for it. All right, digging back into the Flyers to-do list. We talked a little bit about the cap situation yesterday when we were talking more in the short term of, what trades they can make now this off season. But I think, for me, when you're getting, the most in return for these trades, sometimes waiting is the better option. And to me, the time of trading that's going to be the most impactful, especially around the cap situation, is the next trade deadline. Because I think assuming we can get some, good performances from some of these guys, that's when these teams are going to be able to kind of give up more to get that last piece to get them moving forward to finish their regular season or into the playoffs. And I think that while some trades may make sense to do this offseason, I think in terms of this rebuild, next trade deadline is going to be key.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think some of them, based on more money coming off and because they have longer term, are better to wait for. But my only caveat is when you've got a chance to peddle some of your wares at the draft to try and see uh, what teams with extra picks might do in a really good draft, I gotta explore that a bit. So I am gonna shoot out some names at this draft. I'm gonna shoot out Konechny. I'm even gonna shoot out Nick Seeler. I'm gonna shoot out like 4 or 5 different names because if there's one team that says, "Hey, I'll give you this," and you look at what you have or what you need as far as picks or what you feel like you could possibly do, it works for you. The future's more important than the now. So, and the best place to start doing that is at the draft.
Yeah, I think so, absolutely, and you're gonna consider everything, but I think that there's some guys that you may be willing to wait on,
Yeah,
if you don't get the kind of return offers that you think you want. Now, you don't wanna do that across the board because I think that, you don't need to, shoot yourself in the foot by
right.
turning down all the offers, but I do think that a guy like Konechny could go for more at the trade deadline, and then you get him, playing for another season and helping, some of your prospects develop at
Sure,
the same time.
sure. But there's some other guys, and but I'm still me personally. I'm still going to put Konechny's name out there. I get what you're saying, but I'm still gonna do it because I'm going to hope that there's some team out there that's trying to do a cup run that says, we could part with this pick and maybe even this prospect because we think connecting is a big ad for us. That's I got to look at it.
Yeah, and then as far as the rest of the cap situation in terms of potential signings and your RFA deals, like in terms of planning toward the future, like what else that's more long term oriented can the Flyers be doing now?
Yeah, they definitely could add to defense instead of just filling in the Justin Braun types, and even Nick Seeler. I still don't look at him as a long term Flyer. Sorry, I've got to realize that another year D'Angelo's gone. Maybe Adder comes in. Do I think Adder and Zamula are going to both play for the Flyers? Probably not. Something else will probably happen. Some other shoe will drop. So if I could bring in somebody for 3 or 4 years, whether it's in the trade or I trade a player and then I've got cap space and I can get that, I'm willing to do that if I feel like that player, no matter who the coach is going to make the team better even after the rebuild. So that's something where I'm willing to do that, but I'm not willing to, let's say, sign Nick Seeler to a long-term deal for the next 7 years because all of a sudden Torts likes him. No, if I'm Danny Briere, I'm putting my foot down and saying, listen, we'll see what Nick Seeler is after the season. We're not signing anybody long-term now until we get this cap figured out. But those are the kinds of things I'd be thinking about.
Yeah, and other than maybe some guys that are on ELCs right now, there's really nobody that is in the position other than Carter Hart, let's
Right.
say, that needs, a re-signing with significant term on
Right, and he's the one exception I would make if that's what he wants to do. And again, probably wouldn't be more than 5 years, so I could
it.
live
Right.
with that one. But yeah, I'm not doing any others. And again, if all of a sudden mid-season you see that, whether it's Tippett or Cates or Frost are really going to make this jump to the next level, okay, then maybe, you revisit that. But you still could give some of those guys you can give bridge deals to.
Right.
But actually, see, Cates like you can't. Well, Cates you can. You could do one bridge deal with Cates. Frost, I think he's only got one more year before you're walking him to free agency. So it's a little tenuous that way. And Tippett, he's just, he's one more year too after this year. So you got to look at it, and it's a tightrope. It is.
It really is. All right, we've got more to talk about for Flyers long-term to-dos, and we will do that coming up next. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, exclusions apply. We'll be getting to your mailbag questions in the next segment. And if you have questions for us moving forward in future episodes, you can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail. You can tweet us or comment on Instagram at lockedonflyers. And you will get all of your questions answered on the show. So more long-term goals for the Flyers. Keith Jones, in his initial stops on his PR tour to talk about the team, he mentioned the blue line, which you did in the last segment, as a top priority. And I think planning for the Flyers blue line long term is an important thing to do because it can be, the heartbeat of your team in a lot of ways. That you need solid goaltending, but you need a good defense in front of it. That has definitely been a weakness of the Flyers over the past several years. And I do think that they have to look beyond Ivan Provorov, but he is going to be around for the next little bit.
Yeah, I feel like he will be. Maybe he won't be extended. Maybe he will end up in the metropolitan area, like some of us think he will. But I think he'll ride out his contract, and I think you kind of want him there to kind of help the younger defensemen because I think they need to be able to look at him and say, "Look at this guy. He's out there 40 minutes before, more than that. It's like 2 hours before a game." Um, Out there doing stretches and everything else. He's staying longer on the ice than anybody at practice. He in the off season does extensive training to the point where we might tell him to ease up a little. You want that. You want him to show younger guys that. And so I think you need him around for that.
Yeah, I can see that, and that's I just don't think he's the kinda guy that the Flyers are gonna trade right now.
I mean, he'll
And
have a lot of value. So I understand that
yeah,
part. But
yeah, I feel like without him, like, there's not much there, and, despite how much Keith Jones said he loves Risto, like, Risto's not a top pairing
no, if
defenseman,
you start to
right?
put him there, whatever gains you made on him might start to slip backwards.
Yeah, I think so for sure. But that sort of leads into this player development discussion because we really need to be developing a strong decor moving forward and at least get, whether Cam York stays on that top pairing for the future or, we have Addard, we have Zamula, just looking at potential future defensemen that the team drafts over the next several years. I feel like player development is going to be key because they're going to have to get to this point via drafting and developing. And so I think, taking a good hard look at your player development organization, a lot of ex Flyers there. We've talked about that. Um, which again could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. But you have like Nick Schultz in that group. You have Sam Moran, who's fresh in that group. Shell Samuelson has been around for quite a long time, and I'm not saying any of these guys are bad at this job, but I think there's very little insight into it, and just maybe getting some people from teams that have successfully drafted and developed defensemen, right?
Yeah. I think Shell does a good job, but I think as far as the other two you mentioned, there's too much newness and not enough going on. I think one smart thing the Flyers could do is look at other sports and see what they're doing. I'm not saying look in Philadelphia because that's just too easy. Because not as I don't know if the Phillies are doing the right thing. Maybe the Eagles are, maybe they're not. I mean, they made it to Super Bowl, but it doesn't mean it's just not off of talent. But you need to look at training methods. You need to look at how to record these training methods. You need to look at uh, how you're photographing them. You need to looking at finding flaws and trying to correct these things before these players leave, camp, and before they start training camp for the big camp. Those kinds of things, if you could start to add to that and put in some wrinkles that you haven't had before and have some new data and have things that you could show the players, that would be really helpful. And I think they could use a lot more of that. And that's what I want to see them do is they need to get more techie with a lot of that. And again, we'll get into another aspect, which is obvious.
Yeah, I think that's where they really could be innovating and working toward building a program that not only, can take the guys that are supposed to be good and get them there, but maybe develop more potential diamonds that you didn't know were there and look at
Hmm.
some of these guys that are deeper in the draft and get them further than maybe we would have anticipated them getting in the first place by having strong player development and working with their junior teams or their college teams or whatever it happens to be to make sure that we're getting the most out of the draft picks.
Yeah, even like the Flyers went to the one extreme with Ron Hextall wanting all of that, anti-inflammatory food, which maybe some of it, to sort of seemingly slipping back and not really hearing about adhering or having their players doing certain dietetic things or adding certain things into their diet to help them with training or recovery or whatever. just really haven't seen anything with that. So I'd like to see more with that.
Absolutely. And then, of course, leads into more hands on approach to managing the phantoms. And we've talked a lot about that on the show. Still really haven't heard anything about a potential GM for the phantoms. It was not talked
Nope.
about at the launch presser. It's a big question that both of us have for sure, in terms of what direction they go for the GM, but also how does their player development reach into the Phantoms and the coaching staff for the Phantoms, and is there coordination between what the Phantoms are doing and what the Flyers are doing from a coaching perspective, and maybe breaking down that barrier a little bit.
Yeah, there definitely would be if I were around, in the sense that, um, like we want to see a like a full time skating coach that works with both organizations, and the
Right.
easiest way to do that is when camp starts, but also to kind of follow through with that during the year, and even work with players during the year, just on little things like, hey, before you go out for this practice, let's chat for 5 minutes. Those kinds of things. I don't see those kinds of things going on very much, and could be very beneficial because, again, there's right now, we're at a point where, last year John Tortorella sent out a message, a letter to players saying, hey, this is going to be a really hard camp, be ready for it, right? Okay, well, they all survived the really hard camp, but a lot of them didn't get faster, a lot of them didn't get in better shape. So even what John thought was going to be a big gain for them turned out to not be a big gain for them. It wasn't much at all, and they need to be it needs to be a bigger gain. So this is the only thing that you can kind of start this with, is you have these couple of months while they're training in the summer where you can affect some change, but you got to get going on it.
Yeah, I think that's huge, and you're right. It's about not about skating more. It's about skating better.
Correct.
And I think there's a big difference there. And you can, do wind sprints all you want out there on the ice, but if your technique isn't good and there isn't a coach out there correcting what you're doing or improving what you're doing or working on your transitions with you, like all the wind sprints in the world isn't going to do you any
No,
good.
like, have your new skating coach send out a new instructional video, message everybody on the team, and say, hey, open your email, check this out. Hopefully, you could use this summer. See you in a couple months. That kind of thing, where it's kind of like a detailed thing, and it shows things that you could work on every day incrementally. Maybe things they haven't done before. And I think that would be really helpful, because then they could do that in conjunction with whatever they have planned anyhow in their local area where they're training, or if it's like Sanheim in the mountains in Alberta, whatever. But this is what you could add to it. And this is where you could have real change. Last year, it was just a letter. A letter is just too broad. All it is like basically like, get ready. It's boot camp. Okay. Well, you saw boot camp only did so much. Now you could, you need to go beyond that.
Yep, I totally agree. All right, we are going to get to your mailbag questions. A lot of what have to do with what the Flyers should be doing right now. So it continues with the theme, and we will do that coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by Birddogs. I look better and feel great wearing Birddog shorts and pants. Their stretchy fabric really looks good, and it feels good. I like the feel of them. They're going to dry quickly if they get wet, and they are pretty comfy. Compared to my other shorts and pants, they're really top notch. I feel like they do give you a lot of freedom. You could do it doing yard work. Maybe if you're playing golf, you're hanging out with your buddies. Uh, just doing a walk around the neighborhood with one of your dogs. I would be wearing them for that too. And I do feel like, uh, when you're more comfortable, that you could work out better, and I do think you feel better. The shorts are really good for, if you're wearing them to a baseball game. Obviously, I go to a lot of baseball games, so that would be fine. It's just, on the drive in the parking lot, it is, it is a point where, if you have shorts that feel good, you are going to just feel better. You're going to, have a better attitude. Maybe the 2-hour drive home that I'll go on from City Field to New Jersey will be a little better. All of those things, that could really make a difference. Or even if I'm out covering, Flyers camp, uh, if I feel better, that's going to help me with, the 6-hour day that might be ahead of me with doing interviews and covering the players. So those kinds of things are good. So go to birddogs.com/lockedonnhl, and when you enter the promo code LockedOnNHL, they'll throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti style tumbler with every order. And it's a really good tumbler. Like, it has a little switch to open up the drinking area or not, so it won't leak, and it's really high quality. So definitely check it out.
All right, Russ, getting to our mailbag questions. Our first one, really interesting about a couple of draft options here. Could Ryan Leonard be anything like Matthew Tkachuk someday, a first line play driving winger with an edge, and wants to do a Ryan Leonard versus Oliver Moore comparison, which I think is something we could get to kind of more in detail in one of our draft episodes. But what's your take on Ryan Leonard and comparing him to Matthew Tkachuk?
Yeah, I mean, you can't compare him to Kachuk because Kachuk is bigger. He's going to be stronger, and he has a lot of the same uh, techniques that Leonard has. He goes to the net. He shoots really well. So he has what Leonard has already, but he also has what he doesn't have, and that's a little extra size and strength, and maybe that brain, that Kachuk brain, that is just a known agitating device in in the NHL. Now Leonard is pretty close in that he likes to battle and he gets annoyed when he's losing puck battles, and he wants to win all those things, and he does want to get to the net and has a really good shot. But I can't compare those two. The size difference is just enough where I say can't do that. So, but I get what you're saying, and but here's my feeling, and I can't give you a straight comparison for more, but uh, if I feel both guys are going to score similar amounts of points in the NHL if it's close, and I'm worried about the position where Moore is a center or speed where Moore has a little more speed, yes, there's going to be some more truculence with Leonard, and yes, Leonard may score more points. I'm probably still going to fall on the side of Moore, and that's no slight to Leonard. It's just the way it is. You got to remember, Moore also plays on the second line, which is nowhere near as with the U.S. team, which is nowhere near as talented as that top line. And I think that's something else I've looked at and broken down a bit. So that's as much as I can give you right now.
Yeah, I agree with you there because Oliver Moore carries that second line, and Ryan Leonard is a little bit more of a passenger on that top line. And so I feel like Moore is going to give you, for lack of a better word, more skill in terms of having different abilities and maybe playing in more situations than Leonard would. I think Leonard is definitely, 5-on-5 power play, but like you wouldn't put Ryan Leonard on a penalty kill, right? Oliver Moore, you'd think about it.
Yes.
I think
Hmm.
absolutely. So there's that. Scott via email wants to know if we'd be in favor of trading the number 7 pick to someone who wanted to move up in a trade, which included taking Hayes or Sanheim.
No, categorically no. Simply because this player that I can get at 7 could be a top line player for me offensively. Um, so if I can get a top line player, why do I want to give that pick just to get the cap space? I'm not going to be good next year anyhow. But in 3 or 4 years, when this player is ready to play, that contract's falling off anyhow. So all I'm doing is just something that is trying to push the process faster than it needs to go. So I would not do it.
Yeah, I think the only situation I would consider it is if we've already gone through picks 1 through 6 and there's somebody sitting at 8 or 9 that wants to make that trade, and 3 guys I'm 100% okay with are still on the table at that point, so that no matter who this team takes at 7, I'm gonna be 100% okay with who I would take at 8 or 9. And that's, like, the only situation
Yeah, that's
that I
probably
think.
not going to happen.
Right, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But I think that's really, yeah, I'm taking the pick at 7 because it's too much good talent.
Yep.
So Charles wants to know, or suggests that the Flyers will sign a defenseman to pair with Provorov in lieu of Cam York. They will also trade Sanheim and Risto for assets and or picks. D'Angelo being a cancer, he's been trouble on every team he's played for. They will trade him and retain at least half of those salaries and get little in return. What are your thoughts on these possibilities this offseason?
They're not going to retain half on everybody's salary, so they're not going to do that. D'Angelo, sure, because he's one more year, but that's still a tough sell because there may only be one team that wants him. Maybe Carolina takes him back because that's the price they would have paid. Um, as far as Varisto, there's not a huge market for him right now because of the term. So even if you shaved off a little on a year or two of it, I don't know if you're going to get a um, big response for that. So I think who basically, uh, I don't know if you're going to sign somebody to specifically play with Provorov. I'm going to guess they probably won't. Maybe it'll end up being Zamula. Maybe it'll end up being Risto again for a while. They'll figure it out. It's probably going to be Cam York though. Like that's my guess is they're just going to keep York with him, and then hope at some point York turns into him, and so he could be their number one. But again, we'll see how that metamorphosis goes. But I think they're going to sign somebody, but I don't think it's going to be to play with Provorov. I think it's going to be more of a third pairing type.
Yeah, I think so. I think Cam York is the guy who's gonna be with Ivan Provorov for at least this next season. We'll see after that. But I just, again, with the term on all those contracts, D'Angelo is the only one they can trade right now. I mean, I think they could trade those other guys with more of a player in return with maybe some similar contracts or, adding picks in to balance out the value of the trade. But in terms of salary retention, I don't think that's going to do them any good getting out of the cap situation either, especially given the penalty and the Lindblom extra money that will be on the cap
Right.
for this next year as well. So, yeah, I just don't see it happening this way at all. But, stranger things have happened, I guess, with this team.
Sure.
Last question. And this kind of relates a little bit to the trust the process conversation we had at the beginning of the show. But is this a situation where things have to get worse before they get better? And if so, how do the Flyers counteract that?
They really can't counteract it. It's going to get worse. I think Torts went full speed ahead last year to kind of prove a point. So he got a couple extra wins, and I don't think it really helped him in the end. And so, especially in the draft. So I think this year he has to have a more of a steadier approach and not be so hung up on um, game to game stuff. I think he looks at the big picture only to some degree, and I do think he was looking at guys as far as developing, yes, but he still was, like I don't think he was honest enough anyhow with the fans. Like he kept saying, "Well, we're not there, we're not there, we're not." Yeah, okay, we know you're not there. Like clearly you weren't going to be a playoff team. You're not there. But I think if he updated the fans a little bit better each week with the gains that some players are making. You don't have to tear them apart. We're not asking you to do that, John, but just the gains that some players are making and in his, experience, how he thinks that's going, that would go a much longer way. So, like if the Flyers have 8 less wins this year, is it going to really matter? They had what 7 more wins this year than last year, and I think they even floated that at the arena. And it's like, so what? You're like, you're still nowhere.
Yeah, I really think that, this year, despite, what we've heard so far is definitely going to be worse in terms of results. But I do think if they can be, putting that player development plan together, like we talked about, if they're showing progress with the prospects, like people are going to be thrilled about that. I
Right,
really do. I think that's, where you look for your bright spots this season is how are people progressing to your point. Are we hearing about that progression? Are we seeing that progression
right.
firsthand by like incorporating phantom stuff into Flyers marketing, by incorporating prospect updates
Give me a
into
once a week prospect report in
yeah,
the arena. They just
yeah.
they only did it at the end for like Brink and like 2 players. Otherwise, they were asleep at the wheel with that stuff.
Yeah, and they do it on the website, and they have, like,
Mhm.
a weekly prospect update or every other
Right.
week or whatever it is, but I don't think that reaches enough. I
It
think,
doesn't. You gotta do
they
it
have
in
to
the
do it in
arena.
arena
You
and
do.
get people excited. I mean, J.R. Avon is in the OHL finals right
Right.
now, and we're not hearing anything
Nothing.
about it from the Flyers, and I think
Nope.
they need to be doing more of that.
I agree.
All right, that will do it for today's show. Of course, we will be back tomorrow. Everyday listeners, you're going to get a lot of draft prospect information. We're going to talk about Matvey Michkov, who could be available in the 7th pick in the first round. Plus, we're going to get to a 3rd round pick possibility. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So send in your mailbag questions via Twitter at Lockdown Flyers. You can email us at lockdownflyers@gmail or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great day, everyone.